She walked into court and said the words that would stay with the case.
She would be worth more dead than alive.
She made it clear who she meant. Lisa would be worth more dead than alive. According to her, those were not just her own thoughts. They were words shaped by the psychological control of the man she called her foster father. Her attorneys described her as a young woman with a vulnerable past, someone who had been deeply manipulated and might have succeeded in almost any other foster home. They argued that the crimes she committed grew out of the influence of her foster father, Kevin Knoefel, and the emotional control he held over her. At first, that defense seemed possible enough for the jury to consider. It gave them a reason to look beyond the surface and ask how a teenager in foster care had reached such a devastating point.
No, I did! Please tell me! My mom said to die, please! What? She's gonna kill my mom!
But as the truth came out, no miracle came for Sabrina Zunich. What you are about to see is the moment Sabrina realized her story could not stand against the full weight of the truth. A mother of two suffered 178 sharp force injuries and lost her life inside her own home. The case unfolded with a chilling level of control, and the motive behind what happened came from a hidden mix of forbidden attachment and psychological manipulation that few people saw coming. This is the disturbing case of a teenage girl who took the life of her foster mother after an inappropriate relationship with her foster father turned into something much darker. Every major detail you are about to hear has been examined through court records, law enforcement findings, trial testimony, and the jury's verdict. If you have never heard this case before, be prepared. What happened in this real criminal case will challenge the way you think about infidelity, manipulation, and how far a person can go when an unhealthy attachment takes control of their judgment. To understand why this teenage girl was in that courtroom and why she was sentenced to life imprisonment, we must know the details of the case and the lives of the characters before the crime occurred. Lisa M. Knoefel was the victim in this case. She was 41 years old and lived in Willoughby Hills, a suburb outside Cleveland, Ohio. Lisa worked as a social worker for the Cuyahoga County Department of Children and Family Services in a role connected to protecting children from harm. That fact made the case even more painful because a woman who spent her career working to protect vulnerable children was harmed inside the very foster home she had helped create. Lisa was married to Kevin Knoefel. The family included two younger girls, Megan, Lisa's daughter from a previous marriage, and Haley, the young daughter Lisa shared with Kevin. When Sabrina Zunich entered the home, Lisa was described as someone who tried to give Sabrina a more stable environment after years in the foster care system. Sabrina A. Zunich was born on the 27th of October 1994 in the Cleveland area. According to Oxygen, Sabrina's biological parents struggled with substance issues and had repeated contact with law enforcement. Sabrina was mostly raised by her grandmother before she later moved through the foster care system. Oxygen also reported that Sabrina said on Snapped behind bars that she had been diagnosed with ADHD as a child, along with oppositional defiant disorder, anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder. As a teenager, Sabrina had also shown behavioral problems, including conflict at school. Kevin D. Knoefel was Lisa's husband and the foster father in the home. Oxygen reported that Kevin worked as a truck driver. When Sabrina moved in with the family, Kevin held the position of a foster father, which made him the adult with authority, responsibility, and direct influence over her. Prosecutors would later argue that Kevin not only had an illegal relationship with Sabrina while she was still a minor, but that he was also the person behind the plan that led to Lisa's death. When Sabrina was 14 years old, she was placed at Emma Cayley Receiving Home, a group home in Lake County, Ohio. After that, she spent years moving through the foster care system before she was eventually placed in the home of Kevin and Lisa Knoefel. In July of 2011, Sabrina, then 16, was placed with Kevin and Lisa in Willoughby Hills, Ohio. From that point on, Kevin and Lisa became her foster parents. At first, Sabrina appeared to adjust well, and she became close to the children in the family. Even though Sabrina was doing well academically, problems began to appear at home. She argued with Lisa, whom she believed favored her own daughters. Sabrina then turned more toward Kevin, and their relationship became unusually close. Autumn Pavlik, a friend of Sabrina's, later described it on Snapped, behind bars, by saying they were too close and often made inappropriate jokes with each other. That was an important turning point. Sabrina began to see Lisa as the controlling figure in the home, while Kevin became the person who listened to her and defended her. In cases involving manipulation, the manipulator often creates the feeling that only they truly understand the vulnerable person. That can isolate the victim from the very person who might be able to protect them. Sabrina later told investigators that her relationship with her foster father became sexual in the spring of 2012. Initially, she massaged Kevin's inner thighs, then touched an inappropriate area of his body and provided physical gratification for him. By that summer, Kevin and Lisa were arguing often, and Kevin told friends that he and Lisa might get divorced. In early October of 2012, Sabrina asked Autumn Pavlik whether she knew anyone who would be willing to take Lisa's life for her. Pavlik later testified that Sabrina asked if she could find someone to do it. Sabrina also said Kevin and Lisa were going to divorce, and that Lisa was worth more dead than alive. Lisa had close to $800,000 in life insurance, and Kevin told Sabrina that they could use that money to build a new life together and raise Haley. According to court documents, Kevin contacted Sabrina's social worker that same month and said he and Lisa were considering divorce. He also asked whether Sabrina could continue living with him if he and Lisa separated. On October 27, Sabrina turned 18, which meant she could leave the foster care system. Instead, she applied to remain in the Knoefel home and finish high school. By this time, Lisa had begun to suspect that something was wrong between Sabrina and Kevin. Sabrina later testified in court, according to Fox 8 Inches Cleveland, that Lisa wanted her to leave. In the fall of 2012, Sabrina began attending Willoughby South High School. Kevin often drove her to school, and they frequently had an illicit affair right inside the car those drives, according to the News Herald. On the morning of the 15th of November 2012, Kevin parked his car on the way to school and started crying. He said that he and Lisa had had a terrible argument the night before, and that he had intended to kill himself if Lisa didn't die. They then were inappropriately involved with each other right in the car. On the 16th of November 2012, the day began like any other, but no one knew that Kevin and his foster daughter, Sabrina, had already discussed a plan for what would happen in the middle of the night. Kevin deliberately accepted a long-distance truck driving shift that night to create a strong alibi. Before leaving, he reminded Sabrina of the plan they had discussed: to attack Lisa while she was asleep and make it look like a failed home break-in. Lisa was at home with the children. The children in the house included Haley, the 3-year-old daughter of Kevin and Lisa, Megan, Lisa's 13-year-old daughter from her first marriage, and Sabrina, the 18-year-old foster daughter Kevin and Lisa had taken in back in July of 2011. Haley went to sleep around 10 p.m., and as she often did, she later returned to Lisa and Kevin's bedroom to sleep. Megan, who was 13, went back to her own room around the same time. At around 1 a.m., Sabrina took a long serrated kitchen knife and entered Lisa's bedroom. Sabrina began the fatal attack while Lisa was lying in bed. Lisa woke up, fought back, and cried out for help. Megan heard the noise and her mother's screams. She ran into the bedroom and saw Sabrina attacking Lisa. Megan tried bravely to pull Sabrina away from her mother, but she could not stop her. Megan immediately called 911 in a state of panic. Her screams and the sounds of the struggle were captured during the emergency call, which lasted several minutes. Willoughby Hills police arrived only minutes after the call. When officers entered the bedroom, they found Sabrina Zunich near Lisa, still holding the weapon and appearing dazed. Lisa was pronounced dead at the scene. Haley, the 3-year-old girl, was found hiding inside a bedroom closet. Police arrested Sabrina at the scene. She was later held at the Lake County Jail while awaiting trial, and she did not answer investigators' questions. The Lake County Coroner's Office determined that the fatal injury had struck Lisa's carotid artery. The autopsy later showed that Lisa suffered 12 deep wounds and 166 additional sharp force injuries across her body as she tried to defend herself. In total, Lisa had 178 sharp force injuries to her head, neck, torso, and limbs. According to court documents, Lisa fought back and had defensive injuries as well as complex wounds where the weapon entered the body and twisted. The attack was so forceful that the knife was bent. During the incident, Zunich also suffered several injuries and appeared to be in shock. Megan's 911 call was the most important emergency response point in the case. It showed that the first person to bring the situation into the open was not Kevin and not Sabrina, but a child inside the home. This was the moment the family completely broke apart. A mother was fatally attacked in her own house, one daughter called for help, and the younger child hid in a closet. Soon after, authorities notified Lisa's husband, Kevin, who was on the road in Michigan. When he returned home, officers noted in court documents that he appeared quite calm and seemed more curious about the attack than shaken by it. In the spring of 2013, while Zunich was in jail, Kevin received the life insurance money from his late wife. According to Cleveland Scene, he paid off the mortgage, bought cars, purchased a home in Florida, and took flying lessons. By early August of 2013, Sabrina felt abandoned by her former lover and agreed to cooperate with investigators. She began to testify against Kevin Knoefel about his role in the death of his wife, Lisa. At first, the case seemed clear. Sabrina was the person who directly caused Lisa's death. But in cases involving manipulation, the person who carries out the act is not always the only person who created the plan. That is why the investigation did not stop with Sabrina. It took about 10 months for the deeper nature of the case to come to light. Kevin was indicted and arrested on the 9th of August 2013 on charges including conspiracy to commit aggravated murder, complicity to aggravated murder, and multiple counts of sexual battery. What first looked like a case of a teenage girl attacking her foster mother expanded into a story about a foster father accused of manipulation. Psychologically, that changed Sabrina's position in the case. She still carried legal responsibility for her actions, but she was no longer seen as someone acting in a vacuum. She became a young woman pulled into a toxic power structure created by an adult. During Kevin's trial, Sabrina testified that Kevin encouraged or pressured her to make sure Lisa died. CBS and the Associated Press reported that Sabrina testified Kevin had threatened to take his own life if his wife did not die, and that Kevin and Sabrina were involved in a sexual relationship at the time. Cleveland 19 reported that Sabrina testified against Kevin during his July 2014 trial, and the jury believed the prosecution's argument that Kevin was the mastermind behind the case. Sabrina's testimony became the point where the story that she had acted alone began to collapse. Prosecutors used that testimony to show the jury that Kevin was not a grieving husband on the edge of the case. He was the person accused of creating the conditions and pushing the plan forward. That became the strongest DNA of the case. The person behind it was not a stranger. It was the victim's own husband. Cleveland 19 reported that Kevin was convicted by a jury of 6 counts of sexual battery involving Sabrina, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit aggravated murder, and 2 counts of complicity to aggravated murder. He was sentenced to life in prison, with no chance of parole for at least 30 years, plus an additional 12 years related to the illegal relationship with Sabrina when she was a minor. Kevin's sentence confirmed the prosecution's view of the case. He was not just a side character in a family scandal. He was held criminally responsible in Lisa's death. Prosecutors described his motive as a combination of desire, control, escape from marriage, and financial benefit. On the 28th of August 2014, Sabrina Zunich appeared in court and changed her plea to guilty on the charge of aggravated murder. Cleveland 19 reported that she admitted to the fatal attack on her foster mother, Lisa, inside the Willoughby Hills home. Her change of plea meant that the trial scheduled for September would no longer take place. Sabrina's guilty plea had 2 meanings. Legally, it ended her case through a plea instead of a trial. In the story, it also placed Sabrina in a complicated position. She was both the person who directly caused Lisa's death and the person who had testified against Kevin, the man prosecutors said had manipulated her. On the 29th of September 2014, Sabrina Zunich was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 30 years. She was 19 years old at the time, had pleaded guilty to aggravated murder in Lisa Knoeffel's death, and said at sentencing that she felt remorse for what she had done. Sabrina's sentence reflected a difficult balance. She was the person who directly caused Lisa's death, but the background of manipulation by an adult foster father meant the case could not be read as a simple story about an evil teenage girl. Sabrina was responsible, but she was also shaped by an environment that Kevin distorted. After his conviction, Kevin continued trying to challenge his sentence through legal procedures, but court records show that his major efforts did not change the main outcome. That reinforced the current legal status of the case. Both Sabrina and Kevin are serving long sentences, with parole eligibility measured in decades. Psychologically, Sabrina had several vulnerabilities before she entered the Knoefel home: an unstable biological family, years in foster care, mental health challenges, and a history of behavioral issues. None of those things automatically lead to a crime, but they can create a foundation that makes a young person easier to manipulate. When a teenager in that position meets an adult who listens, praises her, makes her feel special, and promises a future, she may mistake control for love. In this case, according to the prosecution's presentation, Kevin became the emotional center of Sabrina's world. Lisa was pushed into the role of an obstacle. This is a dangerous form of distorted thinking. The manipulated person no longer sees the victim as a full human being, but as something standing between them and the emotional reward they believe they have been promised. Kevin was the adult. He was the husband, the foster father, and the person with power inside the home. According to the prosecution's argument, He used that position to create emotional and sexual dependence in Sabrina. Kevin's motive, as reported in the press, included his relationship with Sabrina and Lisa's life insurance. Prosecutors said Kevin wanted Lisa dead so he could collect $750,000 in life insurance. Kevin's psychology can be read through control and exploitation. He did not carry out the direct act himself, but according to the jury's verdict, he created the conditions for a vulnerable young woman to do it for him. In true crime terms, this is a form of manipulation from behind the scenes. The person in control steps back and allows the vulnerable person to carry the direct burden. Lisa was not only the victim of a violent act, she was the victim of betrayal on multiple levels. The young woman she accepted into her home to care for became the person who directly harmed her. The husband, who was supposed to protect the family, was convicted as the person behind the plan. That is why this case is not only disturbing because of the act itself, but because of the position each person held inside the family. Megan was the one who called 911, and Haley was found hiding in the closet. Both girls were inside the home when the incident happened. Because of that, it is important to emphasize that this case did not only take Lisa's life, it left serious emotional consequences for her children. That is the true aftermath of the case. The larger message is that a family system that appeared to be saving a vulnerable teenager became the place where she was exploited, manipulated, and turned into a tool in a criminal plan. What makes this case stand out is that, at first, everything looked like a case committed by a teenage girl during an emotional break. But as investigators went deeper, the story shifted into a case about grooming, emotional manipulation, power inside a foster home, life insurance, and betrayal from within the victim's own house. A young woman with many wounds was brought into a foster family to be protected, but the man inside that family used her vulnerability to destroy the very woman who had tried to save her. The lesson from the Lisa Knoefel case is not simple, and it should not be reduced to one person's actions alone. This case shows how dangerous a home can become when trust, authority, and emotional need are twisted by someone in power. Lisa opened her house to Sabrina Zunich, a young woman who had already lived through instability and needed protection. Instead, according to prosecutors and the jury's verdict, Kevin Knoefel used his position as a foster father to cross boundaries, create dependence, and help turn Sabrina against the woman who had tried to give her stability. For viewers, the warning is clear: manipulation does not always look forceful at first. It can begin with attention, secrecy, promises, and the feeling that one person is the only one who understands. When those patterns appear, especially between an adult in authority and a vulnerable teenager, they should never be dismissed. This case also reminds us that harm inside a family often leaves more than one victim. Lisa lost her life, her children lost their mother, and Sabrina's future was destroyed. The truth matters, but so do the warning signs people overlook before a tragedy reaches a courtroom in everyday family life.